Osborne Young Reading Series 1. The Story of Toilets, Telephones, and Other Useful Inventions. Chapter 1. The Story of Toilets. Long ago, people didn't even have houses, so building a toilet was the last thing on their minds. They roamed the forest, hunting animals, gathering berries, and squatting behind a tree. Then they learned to farm the land and made themselves homes to live in. Some built a toilet in the yard, but it was only a hole in the ground. When the hole filled up, they simply covered it with mud and dug another. This worked fine until they ran out of space. The ancient Romans had a much better idea. Public toilets. They placed a slab with holes over a deep trench. Then they decorated the toilet room with marble and mosaics. Going to the toilet became a great way to meet people. Romans sat in a row, chatting about politics and plays. Below them, water flowed through the trench and washed everything away. At Roman banquets, rich guests didn't even have to leave the room. They simply asked a slave to bring in a silver pot and filled it there and then. In later times, people were more shy about these things. Lords and ladies preferred to go alone, using fancy cushioned toilet boxes, often hidden behind a curtain. These were a lot more comfortable, though someone then had to empty them. Castles and fortresses had basic toilets built into their design. Some jutted out from the main building, emptying onto the moat below. Yuck! Stinky moats were great protection. No enemy wanted to wade through them. But the smells were about to get worse. Medieval towns were being built and everyone had forgotten the Roman public toilets. Luckily, they still had pots. It's cold outside. Don't worry, use this. These allowed people to go in the comfort of their own bedroom. They were known as chamber pots. But the pots had to be emptied, and the easiest way was out of a window. Unlucky passers-by got a yucky surprise. With nowhere for the waste to drain away, the smell on the streets was disgusting. It's a wonder anyone ever went shopping. I forbid you from dumping filth in rivers or on streets, Edward III announced to the people of London. Where else can it go? The problem was finally solved by laying pipes and drains underground. Toilet filth could now glide away under the street, not over it. Of course, when something got stuck, the mess was awful. In 1596, Sir John Harrington, godson of Queen Elizabeth I, had a brainwave. I'll invent a toilet that flushes. A royal flush! Making the flush work properly took ages. In fact, most people didn't have a flush for another 200 years. Many plumbers work hard to improve toilet designs, including a man named Thomas Crapper. He set up his own Crapper plumbing shops in London and took charge of the royal toilets. By 1880, the toilet had really arrived. Since then, only the shapes and decorations have changed. Some are fitted into the wall, others are made to look like thrones. Space toilets even have bars to stop you from floating away. Today, we take toilets for granted, but spend a day in the woods and you'll soon learn how things were for our ancestors. No tea for me, thanks, I'm bursting. Chapter 2. Telephones. Alexander Graham Bell was a boy with a mission. While his father taught deaf people how to talk, Alexander wanted to find out how words travel. His mother was deaf, but younger. If he talked with his lips pressed against her forehead, She could feel his words and understand him. When Bell grew up, he got a job teaching deaf people to speak. In his spare time, he loved to experiment with sound. One day, he played a chord on a piano and heard the exact notes echo on a piano next door. The notes can travel through air, he realized. His mind buzzed with ideas. If all sounds could travel, perhaps he could send speech from one place to another. Wouldn't that be amazing? In those days, 150 years ago, the quickest way to send messages over long distances was by telegraph. A message was tapped at one end of an electric wire and finally received at the other. He says he'll be late for dinner. The tapping code had been invented by an American professor, Samuel Morse, but changing messages in and out of code took forever. Bell thought long and hard about telegraph wires and speech. One day, he jumped up in excitement. I've got it! I'll turn speech into an electric current, he thought. Then it can travel down the telegraph wires. In 1876, with the help of Thomas Watson, an electrical engineer, he invented a mouthpiece and an earpiece. They looked exactly the same and were joined together by an electric wire. When I speak into the mouthpiece, a metal flap will move, said Bell, and my words will travel down the wire as an electric current. Then the flap on the earpiece will move, added Watson, and I'll be able to hear you. They quickly put their theory to the test. Watson sat alone, holding the earpiece. Suddenly, Bell's voice boomed out. Mr. Watson, come here. I want to see you. And so the life of the phone began. In 1877, Bell set off through North America and Europe to promote his new invention. How modern, thought Queen Victoria, immediately ordering one for her palace. Tell John Brown to saddle up the horses. The first phones needed operators to connect people. Number, please, said an operator when someone lifted a receiver. Once the operator had linked two telephone lines together, a conversation could begin. Number, please. Number, number, please. Number, please. Number, please. By the late 1890s, automatic switchboards had been invented, and lots of operators were out of a job. Within 10 years, everyone wanted a phone. Early phones had a handle you turned as you listened. Then there were boxes that people spoke into, a speaker shaped like a candlestick, and the cradle phone. Today, millions of people own mobiles. A phone with no wire would have really impressed Alexander Bell, especially one that can send pictures too. I'm on the train. He's on a train. Chapter 3. Frozen Food. It was 1913, and an American named Clarence Birdseye was trading fur. How can anyone live in this icy place? He wondered. A local man offered to show him around. Dressed in a thick fur coat, Birdseye joined a huddle of fishermen around 3 holes in the ice. Everyone was dangling a line into the chilly water. This isn't my idea of fun. With a sudden tug, one of the men yanked out a fish. It flipped in the air and froze before landing on the ice with a clunk. Is that tonight's supper? Asked Birdseye. No way, replied the fisherman. We've already got enough fish to last a month. Birdseye was amazed. Where he came from, fish went rotten and smelly within a day. Did frozen fish really keep fresh? That evening at supper, he tasted the answer. This is delicious. Thanks. I caught it at last Christmas. Birdseye's brain started working overtime. At home, people would pay good money for frozen food, he thought. Back in America, he invented a quick freeze machine and started the world's first frozen food company, Bird's Eye. Chapter 4: Soccer Nets. John Brodie was crazy about soccer. Every Saturday, he sat in the stadium cheering as his team won, lost, or drew. At one match, Brodie and his friends watched their top striker kick the ball between the goal posts. "Hooray!" they cheered, but the referee shook his head. He didn't think a goal had been scored. For the rest of the match, Brodie sat sulking. Then he had an idea. "Net to go behind the post," he thought. "It will trap the ball and prove there's been a goal." The first soccer goal net was used in January 1891. Since then, soccer fans everywhere have had to find other reasons to grumble about the referee. And the ball's in the net! Chapter 5: Safety Razors. King Kemp Gillette was trying to shave on a steam train. Despite his grand name, he was only a salesman going to a meeting. As the train jerked forward, he cut his chin. "Ow!" he cried, looking at a drop of blood on his cut-throat razor. "There must be a safer way to shave." At the meeting, Gillette sat dabbing his chin with a blood-spotted handkerchief. The company president was making a long, boring speech. "Toothbrushes are big business because they always need replacing," he said. "We must sell more products that wear out quickly." "How about toothpicks?" "Or toilet paper?" Years later, Gillette stood in front of his mirror, making a face. He'd bought a new kind of razor, but already the blade was blunt. "I spend my life sharpening blades," he thought. Then it came to him, the invention that would change his life. "I'll make a razor with a safe, removable blade," he cried. "When it goes blunt, you can throw it away and buy another. No one will bother sharpening any more. They'll just keep coming back for new blades. This is the future of shaving." And they did. Inventions. Before the wheel was invented, 5,500 years ago, carrying things and going places took ages. If it wasn't for Stanislaw Baudry, we'd still be waiting for the bus. He started the first bus service in 1827 to take people to his baths outside Paris. Until 1850, no one had a refrigerator. Without fridges today, the food we keep would smell awful. In 1938, Ladislao Biro was fed up with ink pens that smudge. So he invented a pen with quick-drying ink and called it a biro. When people started exploring space, it led to even more exciting inventions. Have you noticed barcodes at supermarkets? They were first used to label the millions of parts that make up a spacecraft. The material used for fighter suits and the flexible folds on ski boots were originally designed for astronauts. The first smoke detector was made for a space station. Now, most homes have one, too.